Muy bien, amigos de Madhouse, estamos conectados con Kee Marcello, que nos va a contar acerca de su nuevo proyecto Out of This World y, por supuesto, también hablar del pasado de su carrera con Europe y todos sus proyectos. Hey, Kee, how are you? Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. I'm sitting here in Gothenburg, Sweden, freezing my ass off. It's very cold outside.
Well, it's summer here, so I have the AC on here, so
Sounds better.
yeah. Okay, well, let's start. Well, due to the pandemic, you know, the situation around the world was really hard, especially for musicians, but you were able to start a new project, make a new album. How would you describe all this process?
Yeah, obviously it's been very difficult due to the pandemic. But what happened was we were lucky enough to be able to record the basics together as a band in the studio right before it became impossible to travel, you know. So after we had the basic recordings of the 10 songs, we could, you know, finish them off in our respective studios, like everybody had to do during the pandemic. It's really hard to get together because of it's impossible to travel. What happened was we had amazing timing. Actually, before the travel restrictions got really bad, that was when we did the last session in Gothenburg. And our drummer, you know, the lead singer is from Berlin, Germany, and the drummer from London in England. And I think if he would have been staying in Sweden for another day or two, he would have ended up in 2 weeks quarantine in England when he came back. So he was lucky, you know, we were right on the limit. So then we had all the time to finish off this album. And it's been a great experience.
Well, I've been listening to the album, and well, of course, the name of the project, Out of This World, means it's related to your past with Europe, and also the sound, that sound made by the combination between the keyboards and the guitars and the vocal melodies is really characteristic from you. Was it hard to get that magic back in a word?
No, really. I mean, I don't know if my solo work has been released in the, not all of it at least, has been released in South America. But I've been doing pretty much the same thing. I mean, I've been writing melodic rock since the beginning of the 80s now. So I never changed anything. I'm doing the same recipe. So I'm pretty much writing the same song over and over again in different variations. But it still develops with the time and the way everything sounds. But one thing I never would depart from is that marriage between keyboards and guitar. And I play a lot of the keyboards as well.
Yeah, I know.
So it's really important because my keyboards are interlinked with the background vocals, which are really has much more to do with Todd Rundgren than Europe or any hard rock in any sense, actually. Because I'm a soul fan as well. I love Sam Cooke and Smokey Robinson and guys like that as well. And Todd Rundgren is my biggest hero. So the background vocals have a lot of that soul rock thing embedded to it. And that's the big difference, I think, from when I was in the band Europe and, you know, the other records, because the 2 records I was on with the band sounds completely different. Because I always tend to get involved and you know, have ideas for harmonies and background vocals and all that. I think that's coloring the whole thing.
And why did you decide to put this name to the project, Out of This World?
It was like we were struggling with finding a suiting band name, and of course we wanted something with recognition. And I had a publicist that suggested to me that I should call it Kee Marcello to Europe, but I thought that was completely ridiculous, you know. First of all, there's only one Europe, and I don't want to be Europe. That's Europe. I'm me. And but then a friend of Tommy's, a Japanese guy, said, why don't you call the project Out of This World? And he said, well, explain. Well, first of all, it's the album that broke Kee Marcello in Japan. And also, it wouldn't be so much different from when Ronnie James Dio was singing in Black Sabbath. When they were doing live gigs, they called themselves Heaven and Hell after the album.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a pretty smart idea. So I stuck with that name from get-go, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, in the beginning, a lot of people thought it was like a re-recording of that album, which is it's obviously not anything else but, I would say. But I think the name, it grows on me. And because it also describes very much the band. I mean, it's a lot of happiness and energy in this band.
What can you tell me about your bandmates?
The band Personal.
Yep.
Right, yeah. I mean, we have me and Ken Sandin, the bass player from Alien. We go way back. We played together since 2004, more or less non-stop. And Darby Todd has also been in my solo band for many years, and he's amazing. He played with Gary Moore and The Darkness, and he did a lot of different records. Robert Plant, he played with. He's just an amazing, versatile drummer. He can play any style you want. He can play not only metal or rock and roll or blues, he can play jazz, anything you want. He's got everything, so much music in him, so it's so fun to work with him. Mm-hmm. And of course, we have Tommy Hart, whose vocal skills I always admired. He's an amazing vocalist. So I'm really happy with this combo.
Tommy's voice is powerful, but at the same time is melodic. So it really goes well with the music.
And he's absolutely limitless. You know, I never worked with a singer before that doesn't complain about high notes, because he doesn't have a problem with that. He can sing as high as you want and as low as you want. You know, nothing is a problem. And that's also amazing, very unusual.
Well, you released your first album with the band. Is it hard to keep thinking about albums during these days when many bands release just singles on Spotify and on the platforms?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the music business has changed so much. It's really hard to tell how releasing an album just like that is what's gonna happen. I mean, so far, as you probably know, we first released it in Japan, exclusively for Japan, and it was amazing there. Straight up top 10, and then it was #1 for several weeks on the album charts. So over there but then again, over there they sell more CDs. They actually have sales there. In the EU and in the States, I'm not so sure. I don't know how many albums we can sell. But the thing is, I am old school. I like to think about music in albums, you know, thematic. Side A, whoop, side B, you know? And if it's really good, you go back to side A and then side B, another, yeah. So you can just do that. And that's what I want to do with the sort of the full-length album thing. I think about it as a vinyl, really, you know.
Well, we were talking about Out of This World, the album, and that's the name of the album when the first one you recorded with Europe. And I would like to talk a little bit about that, because Europe was one of the most popular hard rock bands around the world in that time. Was it hard for you to make that decision to join the band?
Well, I was in a band called Easy Action, and we were doing really well. So when I got the call from Europe's manager, I thought it was there. I thought he wanted to offer me or my band Easy Action a worldwide deal, like he just did for Europe. But then he asked me to join the band, and I was quite shocked. I didn't think that would be a possibility. So at first I said no, but after thinking over the weekend, I said, you have to remember also, Europe weren't worldwide big then. It was only Sweden, a little bit of Japan, and that's it, you know. So anyway, I decided after that weekend to say yes, and we started rehearsing in October '86. And during that fall of '86, that's when everything exploded. So I don't think anybody in the band was really prepared for that completely crazy following we had during '87, because that was '87 was the peak of everything, I would say.
Well, then you made a second album, Prisoners in Paradise. That's an album that I really like, but it was released during a time when the grunge movement came into the world, and maybe, well, it was hard for those kind of bands to carry on. What are your memories about that process, the 91, 92?
Oh man, I remember I remember most vividly how the Sunset Strip changed. You know, all the guys with ripped up jeans and Hawaii shirts, almost overnight they disappeared, and there were like guys with posh and turtlenecks and strange shit like that. It was just like a, what do we call it, a paradigm change. Everything changed, and all of a sudden, you know, everybody was trying to pretend like it never happened. You know, the melodic rock scene during the '80s. And the bad part about that was that grunge, it lasted for what, a year? And then nobody wanted to be called grunge, but it completely destroyed the music business. So that was bad. For us, not so much. I mean, Prisoners in Paradise sold, I think it sold 2.5 million up to today, but it sold pretty fast, 1.2, 1.3 million copies. And you know, any major label that has an artist that sells millions wants to make another one. So they don't, and record labels, they don't care about musical styles that much. They just care about money. They
as
don't
long
give
as you sell.
Yeah, I mean, they don't give a shit about music, to be quite frank. They worry about money. So they wanted us to do like a Prisoners in Paradise 2, so to speak, like a follow-up to Prisoners in Paradise. But we had a meeting in the band where we came to the conclusion that we don't have anything to say in this climate where grunge is taking over. So let's take a break. And that break became very long.
Well, actually, you played with John Norum in Europe once as a six-piece band, and just for one show. And you know that many Europe fans would like to see the band with two guitar players. Was it impossible to carry on that way at that time?
Yeah, I think it was a lot of different factors that made that not happen. But in retrospective, I can say I think it wouldn't have been a good idea with two such big guitar players, if I may say so, in the same band. It would be like having two cakes for birthday. It's a bit overkill, you know. And so I think Europe is a one guitar man band, and but it was fun doing that Millennium gig we did on a little raft, a huge raft in the middle of Stockholm Stream, in the water, you know, -10 degrees Celsius in front of the Royal Palace. 250,000 people saw it live. It was amazing, and a magic night in Stockholm. So it was fun to do that gig, definitely.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned your previous band, Easy Action, and well, here in Latin America at that time was really hard to know about those bands here. So many people discovered that band some years after you end up with the project. How would you describe Easy Action for the people that that is not aware of that band?
Well, Easy Action started off as a glam band, really. And then on the second album, I went somewhere completely different musically, and we got a new lead singer, which obviously had a real huge effect on the sound of the band, which is AOR. I don't like that term personally, but it is what it is. It's AOR. And that's where I really started doing these guitar riff with keyboards together. That was the first album I did that on. It's called That Makes One. That's where I found my sound, I think, you know. And since then, I've been doing exactly the same thing.
Well, it happens with Easy Action and the hard rock music from Sweden or from Scandinavia. It happens the same as with Hanoi Rocks, that they were from Finland. Was it hard to play that kind of music, hard rock or glam, whatever you want to call it, but not coming from the States and not coming from England? Was it hard for you as a Swedish band to make music?
Absolutely. I mean, when Easy Action we signed a deal with, actually a historical deal with Warner Sire, with Seymour Stein, you know, the guy who signed the Ramones and Madonna, and he's one of the record industry legends. He signed us in 1983, and that was the first time ever a rock act from Sweden was signed to a US major label. It never happened before that. But it's exactly like you said. Americans and British, they didn't take Scandinavian rock seriously. They were like, that's crap, you know, they didn't take it seriously. So that was just, it was pretty much all the countries. I mean, I don't think they took South American rock seriously either.
It happens the same, yeah.
Yeah, so they had like, they were living in their bubbles. It was Britain and it was America, you know. It was really hard to penetrate. The only way to do it was to get a US major label deal, because then you had to go there, and so forth. You know?
Well, there's a story about that, well, Poison, the band, ripped off one of your songs because they thought that no one would notice that they ripped the song off. What can you tell me about it?
Yeah, that's also exactly what happened. Because when they did their first album, they were in the studio, and the producer, who was a big fan of Scandinavian and Nordic glam bands, so he had two records with him. It was the first album from Easy Action and the first from Hanoi Rocks, which you mentioned already. He was playing back stuff for them, you know, as examples on how you can produce and write and whatnot. And he really liked a song called We Go Rocking, which was the standout track from the first album. And he said, why don't you make a cover on this song? And this was way back then when Sweden was nothing. And the guys in Poison thought, what the fuck, some Scandinavian glam act. Let's take it. Who's gonna know? The funny thing, only a couple of years later, I was in Europe, you know, playing the biggest arenas in America. But who would have seen that coming, you know?
Of course. Okay. And well, I know it's hard to think about the future in this situation, but I guess that the idea is to go on tour as soon as possible.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm glad to see that, to be a little bit positive, that it seems like this Omicron thing is not as bad. So maybe we can start opening up a little bit. In England today, they're actually starting to go back to normal again, you know. And there's still some stuff you have to do. You need to wear, you know, a mask on when you take buses or subways and stuff like that. But it's slowly getting back to normal. And I'm really hoping that this will spread. I mean, we need to get on the road. And we were number one in Japan. It would be a no-brainer to start in Japan and do a real tour there, and then everywhere else. But like you said, the Corona restrictions has to go first.
Yes. Well, we hope that we can see you finally live in Argentina. I guess due to social media, that you know that you have many fans here that sends you messages about your new project. So well, let's hope that we can see you here live with this band.
I would love to come to Argentina very soon and play. Awesome.